to the people of the territory, to the testifiers and staff. My first set of questions is to the PSC. We were discussing the fact, my previous colleague spoke about Liberty, but I wanted to speak about the VIA phones. One of the things, I was born and raised here in the territory, and we always had consistent service with the landlines until VIA switched over to these boxes that are electrically run. And one of the major problems we have now is because, let's say there are several outages in our community, the phones die. How do you handle that? Because that's one of the major things, like even with me, because we were having so many power outages, our phone lines years ago kept coming off, completely shutting down, had no access. We just gave up. we just killed the service, and we rely solely now in my household on cellular. How do you deal with that? Because you still have quite a bit of people in the territory that utilize these landlines, and now because they're tied to a utility that's having so many issues, it also affects the phone line.
So the question is, what is done by the PSC?
Yes.
With the, okay, so these are very specific concerns and situation, and we would really have to know exactly what it is that the customer is experiencing. However, when we get the complaints from the customers, we refer the situation to the utility, in this case, the water and power, VIA or Liberty.
When you say specific, I am saying that VIA provides a box.
Correct.
That you have to now plug into a wall in order to get service.
Correct.
When WAPA goes out, that box shuts down. It's nothing specific. It just happens across the board to quite a bit of residents that have this box. When that box shuts down, their phone no longer works.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, you're gonna try? Go ahead.
Yeah, Boyd Sprain on behalf of the Public Services Commission.
1 second. Please acknowledge. That
Can I testing?
Go ahead.
Very good. Boyd Sprain on behalf of the Public Services Commission. When VIA, it wasn't even VIA then, when Innovative developed the new fiber optic hybrid system that uses coax, the entire system now has to be powered from beginning to end.
Yes.
It cannot carry electricity like the old two-wire copper systems could. Mm-hmm. So they had to provide a interface at your residence or your office, and that interface box is supposed to have a battery backup in it.
Yes.
The initial ones that, what was then Innovative, installed were defective. Mm-hmm. And they know that. They should all have been, all of the original ones have been replaced. Mm-hmm. My understanding as of the last time we had a discussion with VIA about this is that I think they have 4 different models of those boxes because they keep updating and upgrading them along the way. And if yours isn't working, you should be able to get a replacement. It should provide you 6 to 8 hours of battery backup when the power goes out.
Well, that was the initial statement they were putting out to the public, but that is not what was happening. And so, you know, I'm just bringing that to your attention because it's still a major issue for quite a bit of people in this territory. I wanted to also ask another question in regards to when you referenced the $87 million that you did not approve for WAPA to recoup those funds for. Would there consistent request to say that they don't get any adjustments in the LEAC right now because they're basically trying to recoup funding? Have you verified with them, or can they answer if any of this financial loss they're saying they have to recoup, if any part of that is the monies that you never authorized them to be able to recoup?
No, I think we have, for all intents and purposes, written that off. With the acquisition of the terminal, a lot of that CapEx that had been owed actually went away when we just purchased it outright. So what would have been 10 years of of CapEx that we weren't able to recover through rates, that kind of went away once we acquired the asset outright.
So this roughly 375 is just operating and other costs that has nothing to do.
Yeah, I want to be really clear.
Yes.
This has nothing to do with those sort of prior debts. This is really operating deficits.
Yes.
This is deferred maintenance. This is accounts payable that we've racked up over the years. This is not has anything to do with those legacy projects.
Okay, good. And I needed that to be very clear to not only myself, but also the public. You guys talked a little bit about Tantalus. I'm going to be straight up. I'm not happy about that agreement at all. Because I take it very offensive that it was even done, to be
1
honest
minute.
with you. I see it maybe a little bit differently. I saw that company come in and said they were going to provide us this level of service that never happened. I saw that company come in, reap monies, and basically use this territory as a guinea pig. And when they failed, some of their MLL systems were failing prior to the hurricane. You know, we know all hell broke loose after the hurricane. But for you to turn around now and be like, okay, they've improved on their service, so let's rehire them. I think that's just like slapping me. Because if you use me as a guinea pig, if you came to me and said you could do all these things and then none of this really happened, and there were a lot of flaws, now because they have now figured out after they've utilized us or maybe other options and other places to now say they've improved their system,
Time.
to now justify that as a reason to come back and say, okay, our service isn't improved. Explain that to me so maybe I could get a warm and fuzzy feeling about this, because how I feel about it, I'm offended, to be honest with you.
All right. So let me be clear, because I've heard you make this statement on the record erroneously before. We are not bringing them back. We did a new procurement. We have a new contractor that we're doing business with, and so we are not just saying they've improved and we're bringing them back. They are our current provider, so there is an ongoing relationship, and we are trying to manage that ongoing relationship. But we have already, and they're aware, that we are moving to a different provider starting July 1st. But there's a period of time that's going to overlap between our current provider and our new provider. I also want to be clear, Senator, that the system did work. It did experience some failures after the hurricane.
Prior to as well.
Prior to-
because, okay.
So, you know, the senator made a point as to it never got to 100%, but it was, from my understanding from the reports that I've read, it did get to over 90% read rate. Then came the hurricanes. There was some payment, you know, so if you hear it from their perspective, I think WAPA stopped paying after the hurricanes. There were some disputes. They did get it back up, believe it or not, after the hurricanes, back to 90%. That's what I've been told in-house by management that was there at the time. And then it started to fail again, and it was just failing at a rate that was faster than we were addressing it. So I don't want to say that it was a guinea pig and whatnot, but I do think that there are some lessons that we have learned from that deployment that we've made sure that we've factored
Listen.
into our new deployment.
I guess my personality is a little different, because if you stab me once, I ain't giving you a chance to do it again. It's like that simple for me. But we could have different personalities. There's nothing wrong with that. But I want to ask about these Wasilas. I'm going to be honest with you. I was one of those that was excited for these Wasilas to come online, because the message that was consistently put out to the public is they're going to get cost savings. Just put them on. Just give us a break. Just another year, another 2 years. Just as soon as they come on. Now I'm sitting here and hearing they mightn't see no cost savings for another 3 years. I'm feeling like I'm lied to, because because that is what was said. Because what was clearly said here earlier is you cannot make any adjustments right now because you're trying to recoup, and the consumer might not see any real savings in any recent time because you're trying to recoup cost and other expenses that went out. So I feel like I was lied to. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. That's how I feel as a consumer. So I understand what you're saying, that you guys have to recoup costs, but I felt I was lied to with the propane, because when we were told when this propane system went online, our bills would have dropped down to 30 something, and that's what the initial message is. We all know that didn't happen. And then now we were excited about these Wasillas, and now I'm being told it might take years to see some cost savings. So I need to feel better. My consumers need to feel better, because every time y'all come before me, I get depressed because I really don't see a pathway to start seeing these savings that I desperately need.
All right, so don't get depressed.
Okay.
You should still be excited. There is a pathway. It's a narrow pathway, but there is a pathway. I wouldn't be here if I arrived and I realized there was no path. There's a path, and we're on the path. It's very narrow. You should be excited about the Wasillas, because if nothing else, it's going to improve the stability and reliability of power supply in the St. Thomas St. John district. It is realizing cost savings, but remember, I guess the best way to put it is WAPA dug itself into a very deep hole. It's going to take a while for those savings to help us climb out of that hole. And I think that's a disconnect. It isn't an instantaneous, we save money today. I still owe vendors, I still owe trucking companies, I owe different vendors, that tire shops, you name it, that I provide services to, that I have to pay.
I totally understand all of that. But understand my problem. Why y'all just didn't say that up front?
We've been saying it.
But that's not the message that was given to the public. And that's where the problem for me lies. I am a type of person, if you tell me what a deal is up front, I could be prepared for it and know how to handle it.
Let me tell you what the deal is up front.
Yes, because I would like to just hear it.
Let me tell you what the deal is up front. WAPA has already done about as much as it can do to reduce its operational expenses. There's a severe austerity environment in WAPA right now. The large projects like the Wasillas, the new generators that we're hopefully going to bring online, the new solar projects, they still don't close that hole. The only way to ultimately close that hole is we have to do something with the debt that we've racked up, and we have to continue to service. So those things are going to get us from hemorrhaging, which was really, if I said anything publicly, is like these projects help stop the bleeding out of 2 to 3 million now every month, that my expenses are exceeding my revenues. We're trying to actually kind of get back to the fact where we're cash flowing positive, and then we need to work on everybody that we owe and all the obligations that we have out there, including the GRS, IRB, and various vendors that we owe money to. So that's what delays us from being able to immediately pass on the benefit of that positive cash flow to consumers.
Okay. And Mr. Chair, could I just ask one last question quickly?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, I appreciate it. I was looking through your testimony, and you spoke about quite a bit of amendments, and I want to just zone in on one of them, because I don't have much time either. I would have tried to do all. One of them had to do with amending Tide 30 VIC subsection 105A12, dealing with reconnection fees and initial service connection. Proposal you had to do with modifying limitations on fees for reconnection and initial service, and it's to allow WAPA to recoup associated costs with providing and restoring service. Now, the reason why I would vehemently fight against any of my colleagues trying to change this, and I'm going to tell you why. I remember when Senator Hansen got this particular piece of legislation changed, because we were going through a situation in this community where, with all the reconnections that were happening, there was like a tier system moving up. So if you contacted WAPA by the morning, it was one fee. If you contacted them by midday, it was another fee. If you come home at night, you contacted them. I remember one time I was working so much, I had to pay $125 just to reconnect. Senator Hansen was successful in setting it to a flat rate fee of $25.
Right.
I remember the then CEO came on this Senate floor, because I worked here for 22 years before getting elected. He sat here and he said to us, don't change it, because that's a way of how WAPA generates money. And I thought to myself, you know, you're really generating money on the backs of people because sometimes people are really struggling. We're already suffering with all these other things, estimation, overbilling, and now we can't really get cost savings because you guys have to recoup for whether it's mismanagement, lack of maintenance, everything under the sun. But then the one thing that the public could have got a decent deal on, you still turn around you want it back. Because now you're saying you wanted to deal with your providing a service and restoring the service. I'm never going to co-sign on that one.
Allow me to explain
Please.
that I think this is something that we can collaborate and perhaps compromise on.
No, but
I
go
support.
ahead.
No. Allow me to explain. Give me a chance, right? I support the legislation. I support what Senator Hansen did at the time. Cost of power was 50-something cents a kilowatt hour. A lot of people were getting disconnected and they couldn't afford to pay for the bill and the reconnection fee. However, inflation has hit us. My employees make a little bit more than they were making back then. So when I sent out a lineman or a meter serviceman to do that reconnect, it cost me a little bit more than the $25. It was always less than what it cost me, but we just need to adjust. I think fees over time do need to be slightly adjusted. I'm not trying to break the bank. There's also something that I think wasn't well contemplated. Not all reconnections are the same. There are times, depending on the egregious nature of the disconnection, that we disconnect from the pole. And when I send that bucket truck out with a 5-man crew to reconnect you at the pole, it certainly costs me more than $25. So we do want to make a distinction between a normal reconnect, disconnect on a residential versus when I have to dispatch a truck to do a reconnect, which is a different
I could
fee.
support because that's
I told you we could
distinct
collaborate.
Okay. But I don't plan on moving that $25 anytime soon. But I would support us amending it to add a separate fee if you have to incur additional costs to use the bucket truck to go on the pole. This senator can live with that.
The last thing I would say is goods and services have gone up all around us. $25 now isn't what it was 10 years ago. So we do need to, because it was legislatively done, there's a need for the legislature periodically to revisit those cost structures and make sure that at least it's covering the costs that WAPA pays to provide the service.
And
Whether that's $5 more, $10 more, that's a conversation we can have.
And inflation has gone up and me getting still overbilled still ain't changed. So thank you so much, Mr. Chair, for the time, and I appreciate your answers.
Thank you, Senator.
Good afternoon to my colleagues, to the people of the territory. Good afternoon to the testifiers. My first question has to do in regards to the payment of entertainment that come into the territory. Do you know that 5% gross receipts tax is taken off the top, or how does that work? Are you aware of that?
Good day, Ian Turnbull. Good day, Senator. Ian Turnbull, Director for Division of Festivals. So every contract that we get from each artist states that all taxes due within that location or jurisdiction is going to be paid by the promoter. We are the promoter.
So we also not only pay their fee, but also pay the 5% on whatever they make.
We do not pay the 5%. We do not pay the 5%.
So who pays it?
No one pays that.
Okay, so the contract says that the promoter has to pay it.
Yes, correct.
But you guys are the promoter, so you don't pay it. So basically, they're getting money scot-free without paying any taxes in the Virgin Islands.
Anywhere that an artist is booked, this is the process. I've been in this business for 20 years.
Well, is it here locally or just across the entire
the
United
planet.
States?
No, across the planet.
And this is standard. I just want to make sure.
This is standard. Yes,
Okay.
correct.
I also wanted to ask a little bit about the tourism revolving fund. I know we hear a lot about this fund on the Senate floor, that it's the amount is an exorbitant amount, but it's basically imaginary. So I'm trying to figure out, how do you guys work around that? Because it's one thing to say the account should have in $100 million in it, just a number, but in reality, it might only be working with 10 million. How do you guys work around that to make sure that you're getting your job executed?
Good afternoon, Senator. We work very closely with OMB and the Department of Finance to execute the payments. We share information when we have big ticket items like Carnival, big payments for marketing. We do the critical list, but outside of that, we share invoices, updates, so that they are aware of what we need for the department.
Okay. And a lot of times when we talk about potential diversification of our tourism product, how much do you guys focus on that in trying to create and promote different avenues? I know that at one point we were distinguishing between the two districts, and there was money set aside to promote St. Croix versus St. Thomas St. John. One was more, heritage.
One minute.
was more, and just the differences. Have you guys really started to tap into zoning in on niches where not only just Carnival, but different types of niches, like, for example, environmental friendly groups? I know we have a law on the books in regards to us not using certain products in sunscreens and stuff like that. I mean, that is a good potential way of tacking zoning into environmentalists, not only promoting that we as a Virgin Islands, we're trying to protect our coral reefs and our environment, and this is something we did here. I mean, do you tap into stuff like that as marketing and other types of niches that a way to help grow our tourism product?
Yes, Senator, we do. For example, you're talking about sustainability tourism. So when we look at the diving, scuba, marine, we encompass sustainability. We just came back from marketing meetings where we took the overarching brands, and within those brands, we looked at specific outside of just like wedding, honeymoon, family travel. We looked at things like active tourism, which is all the hardcore attraction, soft tourism, which is, a spa day, wellness. We also looked at dark tourism, where people want to do activities at night outside of just bars, whether it's night kayaking. There's a lot of niche components that have been popping up, after people come to the territory or come to a destination for a while, they start to look at creative ways to experience the place that they want to repetitively go back to.
Okay, and that's something you're actively focusing on.
We are actively looking into.
Mr. Chair, I heard you say time. Could I just ask my two last questions, if you don't mind?
Certain.
I appreciate you. He is such a good chair. Okay, my last two questions, I'm going to focus on Carnival. I had someone ask me a question, and this had to do with Road March. And I didn't know how to answer them, and I said I would reach out to you guys, and I said, wait a minute, they're coming right here. I could just ask them. They wanted to know, what are some of the criterias for Road March for Carnival? How do people participate? Is it going to be a more formal entry this year? Because they were hearing little buzzes throughout the community. Do you have to submit stuff? Tell me a little bit about that. And my second question, in regards to Carnival, when it speaks to, in your testimony, you talked about the 27% increase due to the St. Thomas Carnival arrivals. What strategies are you using for this year to potentially even do those numbers or better?
All right, Ian Turnbull. Good afternoon again, Senator Ian Turnbull, Director for Division of Festivals. So with your first question, yes, we actually do have a JOT form registration that will go out within the next few days, actually.
Okay.
I literally have it here on my phone that will go out so that people can register their music. Some of the criteria is we, of course, want you to have your music on a DSP, a digital streaming platform. We would want them to have their music there. And then of course, you would have to be 70% of the composition would have to be a Virgin Islander. So, sometimes people collaborate with others from outside of the territory. We're asking that 70% of the composition is sang by a local Virgin Islander. And they have there's one or two other requirements that we have, but that will be going out. They can lock in to our Facebook page, USVI Festivals, and our website, usvifestivals.vi, and that registration will be made available to the community. In the past few weeks, we've been posting local artists' music, just, trying to get people engaged.
And just to wrap up, when you say like the digital platform, I know a lot of our local artists, when they get a CD together, they sell it locally. Not everybody is on streaming platforms. How do you deal with that? Are you saying those people are locked out because they're not, like, say, on Spotify or some one of those platforms? Give us explain that a little bit.
So I know most of these artists on DSPs. If there is one or two that isn't on a DSP, we are open to taking them. But the reason why we're asking for them to be on a DSP is so that we can, be able to promote them. Our platform is big and wide, and so this is an opportunity for us to leverage promoting their music for them and getting it heard. Yeah. With your other question in terms of, could you repeat the last question?
Oh,
Sorry.
You had spoken about a 27%
Gotcha.
increase
Yes.
during Carnival.
So yeah, what we're doing this year is we know that word of mouth is always a good way of marketing. This year we have some creative journalists and individuals that we will be bringing to the territory, or that has already started to promote the territory as a carnival, as a carnival space. We've collaborated again with Uber Soca. We have Blackie, we have Dope Like Blaze, and other individuals. I don't want to name them just yet. Got to make sure the contracts are right? Yeah, they've been promoting low key on their radio stations in the U.S. mainland. So not just leveraging radio here, but leveraging radio abroad in both New York and Atlanta, which are two big hubs for carnival travelers.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Turnbull.
Good afternoon again. I wanted to ask a question similar to what my colleague was speaking about, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to share that because I don't want to really just live off of belief and emotions. I like to live off of facts. So I remember we were here sometime last year and they had a conversation about making sure there was parity across the board between the District of St. Thomas and St. Croix when it came to putting on the festivals. And while I was here listening to the numbers, 2.6, 2.2, I understand the financial differences and how, one brought in more money versus the other. So there are always gonna be some little nuances. It's never gonna be identical dollar amount, depending on what acts are being brought in, et cetera. But the question I wanna ask is about the fundamental basis of how they're put on. Do you still, or since you were able to put on the St. Thomas and the St. Croix one last year, and this conversation took place prior to the the festival in St. Croix, what are your thoughts now on their concerns about parity?
Senator, I'm going to say this. The festival team has done a very good job of releasing all 3 dates under 3 reasons to FET marketing for all 3 of the festivals. What I think that we can do better internally at the Department of Tourism is a lot of times when we mass market the events locally, we don't see it here. So, for example, somebody like a Uber Soca we did a partnership with that has multiple events all through the Caribbean is marketing all 3 islands all at the same time. If we do something, a pitch on carnivals and festivals, we include all 3 of them all together at the same time. What I can say that we can do better is sharing that information with the community so that they know that all 3 festivals are being promoted as a unit and as a repetitive B2B, where you come back for each of the islands within the community and within that festival mainstream.
Okay. So basically, from your perspective, the message of you do believe parity is happening, but you don't believe that message locally is being put out so the public will understand that it's being done equally across the board.
Correct.
Okay, thank you for that response. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for your time.
Thank you.